We've got Jake from BearKomplex and Jason from Boxstar Apparel and Harbor Park CrossFit on the podcast today for a roundtable discussion of sorts on some of the changes to the CrossFit game season, how that potentially impacts vendors, spectators, athletes, etc. And I know some people who listen to this podcast are pretty involved in the CrossFit community, some are not as much. And this isn't just a sort of in the weeds topical CrossFit discussion. This is really a discussion on how companies think about their target market, how they think about how they relate to that market and establish their positioning with that market and really understand, how to solve a problem for people while sort of positioning themselves as experts, potentially by working with elite athletes, by getting social proof and sort of adapting to changes that come up that are out of your control. Like all of a sudden the rules surrounding the CrossFit Games changing, the number of events changing, et cetera. So BearKomplex has been a sponsor of the CrossFit Games for a few years now. So they're one of the larger companies in the space, and Boxstar has recently kind of switched away from being as much of a t-shirt apparel company and moving into actually providing shirt printing services for affiliates. So it's a pretty interesting discussion on how all of us are thinking about these things, as well as how we think about the relationship of, the higher level sport of CrossFit compared to servicing everyday people who are just working out in gyms across the country trying to get fit. So check this one out. Pretty good discussion. Enjoy. So at the CrossFit Games in Madison every year, there's some sort of like nod to cheese, right? It's like, like the cheese curd wheel or whatever, right? Does that like offend you as a Wisconsin person?
No.
Where you're like, my culture is being appropriated and like ridiculed?
Part of my mission with Harbor Park is to change that culture, specifically in my hometown. But I realize that,
change the culture away from cheese obsession.
We're so unhealthy in Wisconsin. Madison's actually been ranked as one of the top health cities in the world, and I think that's partly why the games went there. But the rest of the state, totally unhealthy. So no, I was part of that for all my life growing up. We drink and we eat, and it's kind of what we do: cheese curds and sausages and brats. So, like we said before, we want to make people healthy, but you can still enjoy it every now and then. It's not like you can't have a cheese curd in your life.
Got to.
You can occasionally dip into the gas station cheese curds.
I don't know of any good gas station cheese curds.
I don't trust gas station food, really. Like the roller dogs, that are on there.
Yeah.
We do have a company called Quick Trip in Wisconsin. I don't know if they've made their way down here, but every corner in Wisconsin. And they actually kind of focus on getting some healthy food in there, which is interesting. But yeah, I've never been a big gas station kind and we're driving, a lot for these events too, for the most part. So it can be kind of dangerous.
Yeah, you gotta have some sort of plan going into that, right? Although actually, I do feel like Wisconsin gas stations probably do have like better selection, and I wonder if that is just like Quick Trip. If I just happen to be going to Quick Trips, so that's something I've certainly noticed. Like, if I'm driving through to Minnesota or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a focus of theirs. There's plenty of them that are just the normal, just junk food and sodas and whatnot.
Yeah. So, Jason, you mentioned, running a CrossFit affiliate, and then you guys both also, are running companies that are supplying apparel or gear or whatever to a lot of people who are at least interested in the sport of CrossFit, if not competitive in the sport of CrossFit. So something I think is interesting is the balance between, the mission of improving the health and wellness of individuals who are potentially, afraid of the gym, maybe haven't done significant exercise in the past, and then kind of pairing that with this like, hey, here's these freaks doing a bunch of pistols and handstand walking and muscle ups. And, they're obviously related in terms of both being quote unquote CrossFit, but the best practices associated with that are not necessarily the same thing. There's also potentially issues with like intimidation and people not thinking that they can do it, et cetera. So, how do you guys think about that in terms of like, what is your market like for, BearKomplex or for Boxstar, compared to, who are the people in affiliates, and what does that overlap look like for you guys?
From the affiliate aspect, I mean, like it kind of depends on where, location wise. So like looking at my affiliates in Southeast Wisconsin, we're in relatively small towns. Each town is 100,000 people, not a huge market there. Kenosha has one other competing gym. Racine doesn't even have a competing gym. So we don't think, maybe like probably 95% of our focus is on getting new people that do not CrossFit into the gym. And we kind of think about it like there's probably three kind of people in the world. They've tried CrossFit. They either love it or it's not for them. They haven't heard of CrossFit yet, or they know what it is and they're scared of it. So like we've talked a lot about the games and how they can be intimidating. And like all the changes that have happened in the last year, and kind of like some people have said, they're trying to hide the games now, kind of think getting rid of all the coverage. From an affiliate owner, I don't hate that, because the people we're targeting, most of them are kind of afraid to come in. They think it's all, Rich Froning and Matt Frazier, which when you get in the gym, you realize it's just everyday people. So like from an affiliate owner standpoint, I think it's like one of those things, once you're into the gym and you're kind of drinking the Kool-Aid, then the CrossFit Games becomes this amazing, awesome thing. But if you're not in that environment yet, yeah, it can be really scary. And there are the handful of people who see it and they get really inspired. But then what I find is they come to the gym, they say, hey, I want to go to the CrossFit gym. I've never done CrossFit before. They get a weekend and you never see them again because they realize all the work.
You mean go to the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
They're like,
I'm going
to do that.
Yeah. Sign up and then they're gone once they realize the investment and the time and effort.
To that, to that point, I can't tell you how many times I've had people come up and you say you're in the CrossFit space that have seen the games on ESPN back when they were broadcasting on ESPN. Obviously, that's gone away now, but to that point of seeing a Rich Froning, Matt Frazier, Tia Toomey in those times doing all that, and that can be intimidating. I think that's probably one of the biggest things, for a box owner, is walking through that door and seeing somebody snatching or overhead squatting or doing something with a barbell that's never done that before. And that can be super intimidating. I mean, I've seen it just as a member of a gym. People walk in, it's their first time, and I try to go out of my way to just introduce myself, because I know it can be very awkward. I know it was for me the first time I ever did CrossFit. I was, thought I was fit because I went to LA Fitness, and did chest and back and all that. And I think I puked every day for probably the first 2 weeks, when I first started. And I was like, oh, I am not in shape at all. So trying to let that guard down. Obviously now it's not, I don't think, being broadcast and promoted like it once was. And I don't know, with the new goal of the whole season and things, I think that's maybe what they're trying to get away from a little bit. But I do think there is a place for the sport of it,
I heard a really good analogy, and I don't remember who it was, but they likened it to like the golf scene. Like there's the PGA Tour that people enjoy and they like watching it, but that's not like the whole golf world. There's millions of people who golf on their own with their buddies, every day, every week, whatever it is. And then a few times throughout the year, they get to watch this awesome event, which is kind of like the sideshow of golf. And whoever made this analogy said like that's where the CrossFit Games has to get to, where CrossFit is the affiliate and what's going on in the gyms. And then throughout the year, you can turn your attention to this, and it's just a cool part of it.
Yeah, and I think that's, the sport analogy with something like golf, I think, is pretty appropriate. But then the challenge of it is that potentially the fact that CrossFit is a sport in and of itself is, like you mentioned before, a barrier to the people who are maybe interested but not actually bought in yet, right? That, like you said, the people who already do CrossFit are like, oh, cool, this is great. I have enough perspective to understand what's potentially going on as these people are doing these crazy workouts. Because I tried to do a thruster at that weight and it was terrible. And that guy just did 25 of them without stopping, and then, ran somewhere with like something heavy on his back. Like, how do you do that? That there is that appreciation that comes with having done it, but that it's potentially a barrier for people who have not gotten to that point. So it's like this really complicated, messy situation where, you want the sport aspect to bring the community together because people like it, they enjoy it, they can talk about it, they have perspective on it. It gives them a sense of like, wow, the possibilities of fitness are way over here. So that's somewhat inspiring to me. But people who are just wanting to get started with a fitness program think like, wow, I can't do that.
Yeah, we hear it all the time. Like, people think they need to get in shape before they can come to the gym. Yeah, I want to start, but I'm just not in shape like enough to go. No, that's not true. Like, we will get you in shape, kind of deal. Yeah,
and I think that with some of the changes to CrossFit.com, right, with the focus on like older folks doing stuff at home, et cetera, there was an interview with Greg Glassman that Julie Fouché did recently, where he's like, listen, I understand that Bob is the name of the older gentleman lifting antifreeze jugs, right? He's like, Bob isn't going to see himself on CrossFit.com and be like, holy cow, like, let me go into the nearest affiliate, right? But the goal, it's almost like the exact opposite of what they did originally, which is like, we're going to show you the most elite people and show you, that we're training SEALs and MMA fighters and boxers or whatever, and that we're kicking their asses and they can do all this crazy stuff. So that's going to sort of pull everyone else in that direction. And then it's almost like a polar opposite of that, of like, now we're going to show you like the, most deconditioned person at home, lifting antifreeze jugs, and then try to pull everyone else like that's over on that end of the fitness spectrum. And I have no idea if it's going to work or not, but I think it's a pretty interesting strategy.
Yeah, it's very interesting because probably certainly would not have worked 100% if they started with the super deconditioned, the super deconditioned, and then said, hey, we can do, the Navy SEALs too. And then we'd be like, well, that's not for us, right?
Yeah, I think it brought a tremendous amount of awareness to the sport, with doing all that. It's kind of interesting because there's a dramatic shift that's taking place. And really, I understand the change and the goal, because really at the end of the day, to get more people out and just to move and do things and challenge themselves, I think that's pretty spectacular. I guess from our side as a sponsor and a vendor of the CrossFit Games, I think there's definitely a place for that too, because it raises awareness on other things, and maybe even to the point of getting a member that's a new member for an affiliate owner or something like that, to get to the point where maybe they try their hand at their first competition, young, old, whatever age, just to challenge themselves, because that's ultimately, I think, what CrossFit is. You get better at things, right? So things are very difficult when you first start. Then you get a little bit better at them, right? And then you challenge yourself to do more, or the next logical progression. Once you get that first pull-up, well, let's get 5 pull-ups, or let's try a chest-to-bar pull-up, and then, eventually get to a muscle-up. You can continue to challenge yourself. And I think that's where the whole competitive aspect is for it too. For somebody to get out there and be uncomfortable, or be comfortable with the uncomfortable, and maybe do their first competition in front of people and actually work out with a friend, like, that's pretty cool. And being at a lot of the competitions where or events, South Loop, 4 years ago when we first came here, seeing people do that kind of stuff for the first time and just feeling so good about it is really a cool thing to watch. And the high fives and picking each other up, I think, is really special. And that goes back to the community kind of thing that you're talking about, Jason. So
yeah, and competition is really cool because, no matter where you are, I think a lot of people have maybe a high school sports history or growing up, and, the competition kind of brings you back there where, the camaraderie that's involved with, just going to battle with your team and the bonds that you form. Like for me, the competitions, back in like 2013, 2014 is, I think, really what kind of drew my love for CrossFit. And then, over the years it's shifted, but yeah, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah. So Jake, for you, if you're thinking about the typical person like buying BearKomplex stuff, right? Are they someone who is interested in competing, that they want to do, local competitions or the open or whatever? Or are they just someone who is in their gym and is like, I always rip my hands? And someone's like, have you ever tried grips? And they're like, I don't know. They're like, we should get these. Like, where are these people coming from? What's their deal?
I think we see a mix all over the board. Because once you get to that point where you rip your hands the first time and you hop in the shower and your hands get lit up, that's not a good feeling, right? So we started with hand grips, and that's probably what we're most known for. But we've got a line of products that from like resistance bands that everybody can use. When you're trying to get your first pull up, knee sleeves, belts, all that kind of thing as well. I'm an old guy, so I slap it all on to try to make myself feel better.
Just covered in neoprene, just like, okay.
Yeah, but we,
the hip igniter going.
Yeah, hip igniter, anything you can use to get the joints fired up. But I think that, the more you progress, the more you start to depend on gear, because you're getting better at things. You need more support. And we have the highest level athletes in the world wearing our stuff, but we also have, 60-year-old grandmothers wearing our stuff because she's got soft hands and doesn't want to tear them up. And she can, do a couple pull-ups with a band, and it helps her hold on to the bar a little bit better. So it's all over the place. I think we have some stuff that is, more focused towards the high level athletes. They just, they burn through it a lot quicker, for sure. So
I always love when you get the new member that has like the Global Gym gloves with like the cuts, and so the fingers are still exposed.
And the padded,
it's like,
palms.
Well, there's a better product. Let's show you what these guys are.
Yeah, there's always that point where the switch sort of flips for new members. But like one day they come into the gym and they got, BearKomplex grips and like Rogue socks and Metcons or whatever. You're like, oh, okay. I see you went shopping.
You bought it.
Yeah.
That's when they're classified a quote fitter.
Yeah.
They're for sure drinking the Kool-Aid at that point, which is great.
Like, okay, you went shopping. Got it. You're on board. Cool. That sounds pretty good. I think that the influence of elite athletes on the CrossFit community is really interesting as well, right? That people are potentially following these athletes. They follow them on Instagram. They're interested in their stories. They like the sport. And then obviously in any situation, people who are viewed as prestigious within the community, people are going to just want to do what they're doing, right? It's like, oh, cool. They're wearing that shirt. They're wearing, those grips, those knee sleeves. I want to do the same thing. So, how do you guys think about it? For BearKomplex and Boxstar, how do you think about that relationship with elite athletes in terms of promoting your products compared to, just understanding where the individuals who are actually wearing your gear day to day in the gym are at?
But I think personally, when we first got started, it gave us a level of credibility to have. Our first athlete was Nick Urankar.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense too, because people are just like, I don't want something that's going to break.
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
And Nick was our first athlete that we really started working with, and he gave us a level of credibility because at that time he was a 2 times games athlete. The guy's chiseled out of clay or stone or whatever you want to call it. And, it worked really well to say, he's using our stuff, he stands behind it. To this point, we work with a lot of high-level athletes, and how many people out there that do CrossFit, do they really know who like a Tia is or a Rich Froning or a Noah Olson or whoever? I don't know, but what I do know is that maybe they're a CrossFit fan or they go to a CrossFit affiliate and somehow they see like an ad of ours on Facebook or Instagram or something like that, and maybe they know who those people are or not. Hopefully it's a cool video where they're, thinking, oh, this is good. I actually need that anyway. And they may or may not know who the person is. Now, on the other hand, there are, thousands of people out there that do know, that follow the sport, that go to the CrossFit Games or, regionals before sanctionals now, I guess, and are huge super fans and follow these people on Instagram, like you're saying, Todd, that live, breathe, sleep. If Tia Toomey says this, I'm going to do it no matter what. So there is kind of that level, and I don't know where it lies, but, I think both ways. I think if you make cool content with people, they may or may not know who they are, but some are like super crazy fans that just follow these people inside and out. So,
we've kind of with Boxstar kind of shifted direction a little bit. And I don't know if it's because, there's 100 apparel companies in the space or what, but there's the part that me and my partner do Boxstar kind of on the side. He's got a full-time job. I run the 2 gyms. So we don't have 100% of our time to focus on that. And as you know, Jake, athletes can be fun to manage. Fun is in, quotes there. So it got to a point where we had to evaluate, the effort that we're putting in it and the cost. Was it worth it? And then we realized, we kind of shifted our message a little bit, and we realized, our team, we're not going after the elite fitness. We're kind of just the everybody's that, you have a full-time job, you got a family, come to the gym, and, you have an hour, if that, to bust your butt, but, your goal is always to improve. So we're really trying to laser focus on that area. And we still love competitive CrossFit. Like we went to the games, or I did, and had a great time, but that's not who we're specifically talking to now. And we've kind of gotten more into the affiliate wholesale side of things that we talked about before the show. So we've kind of gotten away from the athlete side of thing just a little bit. Who knows, maybe we'll go back to it in the future. Just not a priority for us. I will say when we were growing though, same deal. Our 2 guys were Dylan Martin and Street Horner, both from Iowa. And they really got us a super strong foothold in that community. That's still strong for us today. So I definitely think it was significant for us for the credibility piece, getting into it to start.
Yeah, there's almost like the trickle down effect that we were talking about with CrossFit as a whole previously, right? That you have the elite athletes, then you have the people who are fans of the sport who are obsessive and know everything about everything, and then those people potentially then will buy apparel or gear or whatever because of the elite athletes, and then those people then are potentially influencers within their own community because they're probably the better athletes, the coaches, etc. So then the people within that specific community are interested in what they're doing, and they make recommendations. So it's like a kind of fun.
And there's way more at that level than there is the elite. I mean, the elite, they're freaks.
It's pretty unique in the sense that there may be 1 million CrossFitters, but in that ecosystem, there's thousands of, a gym with 100 people in it,
Yeah.
And, it's, we kind of talked about like what FitAid did originally was they got into every gym. People started loving FitAid that way. And now, 3 years ago, they were kind of like on par with Killcliff. And does everyone even know Killcliff anymore? Like, nothing against them, but FitAid kind of just took off. With that model. Yeah.
It's, I was talking to my buddy Ben who runs WOD Prep. I don't know if you guys have seen that. He was on the podcast recently as well, but he offers coaching on, online coaching on like specific movements, right? Like get your handstand walk, get your double unders, get your muscle ups, whatever. He's built a really impressive business through that. And his mindset is like, there's all these people fighting over coaching the 1% of the 1%, you know, saying, oh, here's our athlete who made it to regionals, here's our athlete who made it to the games, whatever. And, you know, there's already established players in that market. It's going to be hard to take market share away from them. And the reality is that most people who are doing CrossFit don't want to train for 4 to 6 hours a day and do double sessions and, you know, A1, A2 through F1, F2 in their training program, right? That they want to figure out how to get double unders so they don't have to scale every time they see double unders on the whiteboard, right? And that's a pretty compelling insight in terms of like, hey, there's this huge market of people over here that need to be served. But it's just so interesting, these different areas, like how much focusing on the elite can then, in some cases, bring those, you know, the vast majority of people in CrossFit gyms across the country to you. In other cases where it's potentially, you know, detrimental or negative just because you're entering a saturated space or doing something that's potentially, you know, intimidating or off-putting to those individuals who are like, I don't want to do that.
And, you know, that kind of goes back to what we talked about, the whole CrossFit Games as a whole. Like, let's be honest, is it kind of drawing too many people? Do you guys think that's a thing? Like, how many people want to be elite? And, you know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there was a lot more opportunity. And I think that's kind of narrowing a little bit. You know, is that something we have to consider, that maybe we need to kind of pump the brakes on that? I don't know.
You mean just in terms of people trying to be competitive?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think that, because I've thought about this a lot, right? I mean, coaching athletes of varying degrees of seriousness, right? Some people who want to just compete locally and do well. Some people who just want to get better at the sport of CrossFit, independent of any sort of competition. Some people who want to, you know, just look good, feel good. And some people who want to compete at a high level and actually have like a realistic shot or a history of doing so. You know, and that I think the changes to the season are very interesting in that there's more opportunities for people to do competitions with all the different sanctionals. But it's also become clearer and clearer, like, what your realistic trajectory is in the sport, right? That I think more people in the past had some pipe dream of making regionals, right? That was like not totally unrealistic, but was like probably not going to happen, right? Where it's like you've historically done pretty well. If you somehow manage to get like a good amount better and get lucky, like maybe you could somehow sneak into regionals on a team, like it could maybe happen, but like it's probably not gonna. You know, there were a lot of people in that situation who sort of had that taken away from them, but now there's much more opportunity to compete at these various sanctional events, but it's not quite the same thing because you are sort of signing up like, yeah, you know what, I am signing up in the intermediate division and I have no shot of like being on the competition floor with the elite, but I'm here doing it. So it's interesting. I don't know.
I agree with that 100%. I feel like in the current state, that kind of mid-level, if we can call it that, making regionals, for a lot of people, if you made regionals, that was like you accomplished your goal of your training throughout the year. And I mean, how many do we know that are, you know, perennial regional guys or girls that have made it 5, 6, 7 years in a row? And now, I mean, I know a handful personally that just kind of backed off altogether. Yeah, you can go to Granite Games and go do that, and you know, the probably not the elite like the pro level or whatnot, but it's not the same, as you're saying, to be out there and really have all of your friends and family and members from the affiliate come out and do that. And I feel like that has been taken away and been diluted a little bit, because ultimately probably the three of us could go get a team somewhere, and maybe, I don't know how you guys are feeling, maybe not, maybe I spoke too soon, but I do feel like that level of it has kind of disappeared for some of these.
Should we kind of make that transition? Because Jake, I know you go to what almost all of the sanctionals, right? How do you feel like the season is now compared to that, from kind of like a spectator? I thought there was a lot more action throughout the year, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, certainly as an athlete, things are a lot more up in the air and uncertain. Yeah.
I think from the ones that we went to this year, normally whenever we've done regionals, I feel like the turnout from just spectators was larger. And I don't know. I mean, Wadapalooza is always crazy nuts because it's Miami in January, right? So that's just an excuse to get out there. But like having a regional in Nashville, Tennessee, like it used to be packed with people that were coming down there.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, we were all there.
You know, the ones like in Del Mar, like in California, were always just crazy busy, and you would see people come from afar. I mean, there wasn't anything west of Minnesota this year, you know, but obviously Del Mar's coming back next year, so that'll be really cool. But I feel like it kind of lost that luster in the fact that you had somebody at your gym, maybe a coach or whatnot, that was a regional level athlete, and there was people from the gym that were really coming out in droves to go support, you know, when now if that regional athlete's going to like a Granite Games or something like that, like, I don't know. You know, like just to compete in the pro division or whatnot. Like I don't know if the people are going to follow that way.
Right.
You know,
hopefully some of these events can draw that luster that regionals had. You never know until it happens. But I mean, I thought the games were, you know, even with the change with the cuts and everything, like, and it also had to do that. It was a race at the final day between Fraser and Noah Olson, but that was exciting this year.
Yeah.
And that was fun to watch, which the past couple of years has been good, but not like this year.
Yeah, and I'm not good at, you know, estimating crowds or anything, but it didn't feel any different to me in terms of like the number of people there.
Yeah, I would agree. It was similar, like, you know, normally we don't get a ton of time at events to go out and watch the actual events. But I made it a point to get out there for that first event just to watch that happen, you know, when half the field almost is getting cut. I think that level of uncertainty was pretty exciting. And the arena was, or the outdoor stadium was packed for that, you know, and that was the first event, which was pretty cool because it is change. And I think change is good always, right? And then people trying to figure out, you know, when is my favorite athlete gonna not make it, you know, and then people start freaking out and getting bummed out, and now they don't like the system because, you know, the Vellner or Fikowski or somebody got cut. Well, now they think it's, you know, everybody's complaining about that. Well, you know, at the same time, like, and I think Castro said it, like, well, you got to get better, like, don't screw a workout up. So I kind of do like that aspect. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but
yeah, I think I just started writing something about this because I've had a few conversations with people, and I think that the people who don't like it because there's more of an element of luck now in terms of what the events actually look like, right? That any sport is going to have some sort of optimal balance of luck and skill, right? That some level of luck is involved in everything, but that people don't like sports if there's too much luck, because then the skill doesn't necessarily dictate the outcome. But if there's no opportunity for surprise, then it's not exciting, right? So it's like, what is that sweet spot?
Yeah.
And I think that with CrossFit, there's always been an element of luck in terms of what do the events look like? You know, do you get a no rep? You know, do you get a penalty on this type of thing? Do you eat something wrong or come into the event kind of sick, right? All those things can obviously dictate the outcome. But now the actual order of the events is part of that too, independent of just like the normal variation and the events themselves. So I think that the people who are upset about it are thinking, well, now there's too much luck involved, right? But I think that, when Castro was talking in the press conference where he's like, yeah, I don't care, just get better. For him, I think that his thought process is something like, you know, I'm trying to find the fittest person, and the fittest person needs to be able to handle any sort of adversity and anything that comes at them. So he's actually okay with introducing more chaos and more luck into the system to dictate the outcome, whereas other people are thinking this is more of a sport, and I want there to be more of a skill component to actually, you know, not just say who's going to win, because I think that Tia and Matt win no matter what, as long as the sport, you know, the events look roughly like what we would consider to be CrossFit. But I certainly think the podium completely changes if you flip the order of the events.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think those people that are upset, you know, you have to understand that CrossFit by definition is kind of the chaos. And if it was predictable, then we wouldn't be doing what we're trying to do, you know. But looking at that first event, like I was watching last night a few of the interviews, even like Brent Fikowski, Josh Bridges had one. They all said like you couldn't have picked a better, well-rounded first test for that workout. You know, the gymnastics with the rope climbs, the running, and the heavy snatching, like that's pretty much testing all 10 physical traits that CrossFit's after, you know, if you follow the methodology of CrossFit programming.
And there's people that couldn't even get the snatch, you know, to even get through a round, which I guess that probably makes it easy that you probably shouldn't be there at that point, right? But there was a handful that we were watching that just couldn't even get a single, you know, at 185 as far as the men went, you know.
Yeah,
which
and then
sucks if you flew halfway across the world to go run a 400-meter run and do three legless rope climbs just to stand there.
Right. But, and then, you know, having Ben Smith in that first heat really kind of opened some eyes too. I mean, like it showed the difference, in my opinion anyways, of, you know, Ben Smith, even though he didn't qualify for the games, he's still top 20, top 30 guy.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I think that my concern with it just has to do with the, like you just mentioned, Jake, the actual experience of the athletes, right? That from the perspective of just like, can you adapt to anything, and can you handle chaos and uncertainty and unpredictability, and, you know, getting woken up at an early time and flown somewhere and you have to run on hills, or surprise, there's all these cuts, you know, like that's certainly part of the game's experience. And I think that the way that CrossFit has defined it, you know, athletes have to expect you don't know what's going to happen, and something is probably going to be thrown at you that is unexpected, that's meant to not just make the competition interesting and challenging, but from a mental perspective to challenge you and make you question yourself and whether you're good enough, and like, can you just adapt to that, right? That's very clearly part of the testing historically. But my concern with it has more to do with, are athletes going to be willing to devote the same level of effort to the sport if they feel like there's just this element of like, I don't know what's going to happen, not within these parameters, but like at all? Do I really want to devote my life to doing this if the rules are just going to change suddenly?
Right. That's interesting, because I said I watched that interview with Rory McKernan and Brent Fikowski, and he kind of alluded to the fact that, you know, he reassured him that he was going to be back next year, but it said it made him question if an athlete his size, you know, he's 6'2", and Mary obviously is not a good workout for him. So it made him question if he can compete in that format. So it's definitely a valid concern, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's not necessarily like a question of your specific fitness also. It's like, oh, if this is the way it's going to be structured, you know, I could show up every year and just have like a quote unquote bad draw every year and just be sent home early. Like, do I want to give up my entire life to just get sent home? Right.
And the other, hopefully it doesn't come to this side effect, is it might, we've kind of known that there's a prototypical athlete size and shape. Is it going to make that prototype even more like, you know, Brent Fikowski's an outlier? Is it going to make, like, is that a barrier now? Like, you have to be 5'10" if you're a guy, 180 pounds, and if you're too tall, you're not going to do it?
That's a really interesting point, because already you have this sort of, you know, the way the events are structured and the movements that are chosen, that sort of selects for a certain type of individual. And the way the scoring works, it's already bad. Like, a weakness is worse than a strength, if that makes sense, right? Where like the winners are the people who don't have weaknesses, not so much people who are good at certain things. And then if there's more cuts, then weaknesses are more of a problem. So that potentially selects away more of those outliers. That's a really interesting point.
You can't afford to have a bad workout at all, you know. And I think that's why Noah, in the past, he's always, you know, kind of been one of those that's had like one bad workout, you know. And this year he really didn't, which is what I think allowed him to catapult to the position that he, you know, was in this year, and be able to lead after a couple of days. But if you have one bad one in this current format, like, that's it, you know, you're probably out of there. So you got to make sure you're very well rounded.
Yeah, and I mean, that sprint really kind of opened some. I mean, I know it got a lot of negativity, but you know, I've been in CrossFit for 6 years, and for at least 4 or 5 years of that, I've known that an area that CrossFit lacks is side to side. You know, we only go forward and backwards. Like if you're an elite athlete, you got to know to train that.
Yeah. And there's always the element of, things like that don't get tested until the games usually, right? And I think we are potentially seeing more of that with some of the sanctionals, which I think is good, that there's more variation in testing and potentially more outside of the gym types of situations. But you always have those athletes who are extremely good at, muscle endurance based sagittal plane activity, right? They can just do thrusters and burpees forever and strict handstand push-ups and toes to bar. But then as soon as it's like, all right, now run, like it's like
the most basic sporting activity is run and cut.
Yeah. But a lot of those folks haven't, they didn't play running sports growing up, and their body type isn't one that's built for that, and they just get exposed on those events. So, seeing that come up at the games, you're always like, wow, this is one of the fittest quote unquote individuals in the world, but they can barely do this. And now there's more of a consequence to that as well, which is interesting.
One of the tests that we always talk about is throwing a basketball at them and having them dribble the length of the court and shooting a jump shot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did. How many years ago they did the softball throw?
Did they?
So it's, not totally out of the question.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be. You should do a piece of BearKomplex content.
We should just have CrossFitters dribble basketballs, and I'm being from Indiana, basketball is.
Yeah. Well, you guys got a hoop in the shop, right?
Yeah, we play ball regularly in knockouts. So we're always tagging Castro because Castro is a big knockout guy. He hadn't showed up yet, but I don't think he wants the heat.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I would imagine that the potential consequences of being shamed and knockout could be disastrous.
We're gonna work on that.
Yeah, I mean you guys should get all the sponsored athletes together and
just play basketball. Just see what happens.
See what it looks like.
Just see what happens.
We'll all be injured.
Yeah, everyone sprains their ankle.
Yeah,
I think Dre though on Mayhem. He was a real athlete though, right?
He was.
I guess Rich was too.
Yeah, football and there's a lot. I think there's a lot of football, that crosses over to CrossFit. But I guess also if we're talking about 5'10", 180 pounds, that's not the basketball prototype either.
Right.
So
yeah, not so much.
Yeah, that's also interesting to think about, like who we typically think of as elite athletes in sporting sense, versus the elite athlete in CrossFit. They do not look the same at all.
And even I think that being an elite athlete in the sort of like classic American sports sense is often negative for CrossFit performance, right? Because we think of people who can jump out of the building and sprint and cut and make like quick athletic plays, and that often those individuals are far too like powerful and explosive to be good at CrossFit because they just get tired,
right?
That they can do something incredible on a football field or a basketball court or a soccer field, but then when it's like, okay, now do sustained effort activity for 15 minutes with dynamic contractions, it's like they just melt down. You can't do it. It's the their ability to move fast is almost negative to their ability to be sustainable and enduring.
I remember stories of some. I don't know if it was a collegiate cornerback for a team or if it was a professional, and they did not let him work out. They didn't let him lift weights because I don't know if they proved it or they were afraid that he was going to lose his explosiveness. But then you hear stories like, I'm a big Badger guy, like Ron Dane was squatting 700 pounds for reps, and just truck sticking everyone on the football field. So it was kind of cool to kind of see that translation.
Yeah, I think that the some of that stuff about lifting weights making you slow is like not really accurate, because I think a lot of that is more people like drawing inference and correlation, where it's like, okay, if you look at bodybuilders or even CrossFitters or something like that, and you see people who are good, often the traits that make them good at bodybuilding or CrossFit are traits that would make them bad at like explosive sport-based activities. So they see it and they're like, oh, if you do CrossFit, you're going to end up like one of these, sort of like muscle endurance-y, not terribly explosive people. And it's like, well, that's not really what's going to happen. Those people are just good at it. There's plenty of people who can do something like CrossFit and not turn into like a, an 80% effort, like just cruise through everything type of thing.
Yeah, I believe Kobe and Jordan also used to lift on game days.
Yeah.
Before they got out there. They would actually go in the weight room and tear it up before they got out there, and it's two of the best that ever lived. But
yeah, get nice and snappy.
Yeah.
Get nice and get all that post activation potentiation, jump out of the gym.
Those are big words.
That's right. Some exercise science there for you. So if we think about we talked a little bit about sanctionals in the new season. That's a lot of events. That's a lot of events coming up. And so, for BearKomplex, you guys have historically been at, just about everything, right? The various regionals, CrossFit Games, Granite Games, Wadapalooza, South Loop Games. Obviously.
I was thinking about that on the way down that first event, because I was back here in this room.
Yeah.
I was like, who's this new guy? Set up shop right in front of the competition there.
Yeah, that was actually awesome. So we should tell that story because that's very funny. So when we had a competition, we still do, our first competition that we ran called the South Loop Games, BearKomplex came on, and you guys were hustling from the start. You're like, we need to be on the main floor because we had like a vendors area in the back, and we were working with our friend Brendan on the competition. And I don't know the actual negotiations that you guys had, but you should tell us about your hustle and desire for exposure.
Well, quite honestly, sitting in the room that we're sitting in right now, I didn't feel like a lot of traffic was going to be coming back through here.
It was a valid thought.
Yeah, it was correct.
And at that point, if there was an opportunity to get out on the floor, which there was, because we ended up getting out there, we had to grease the wheel a little bit, I think, but it paid off in that instance. That was one of the first events we ever did. That had to have been either late 15 or early 16. I don't remember what time of year it was.
I think it was end of 20. No, it was the beginning of the year. It was in January.
In January of 16?
Probably 2016,
yeah. It was, yep.
Because I remember trying to park my car today, and I was like, man, we parked around this alley back here. And
yeah.
That was one of the first ones we did. So it's funny to think that, all that's happened in the years, but being able to go to these events and now we're sitting here in the couch right here in the same gym that we did one of our first competitions. Pretty cool. So
yeah, and to add to that, I think that that sort of instinct of like, okay, we're here to get exposure. We're getting put in this back room where like people are just going to come through to go to the bathroom and not even pay attention. Like, this sucks. And then to be like, all right, what do we have to do to get on the main floor? Right? That's that instinct, right?
Yeah. Placement at events is very important for sure. So we always try to do whatever we can to get in a good spot where you get the traffic.
Yeah.
Jason, that too. So
we've actually, for the Granite Games, we've gone 4 years in a row now, and the past 3 years we've specifically said we want the exact same spot, and paid early to make sure we got it, and it's paid off for us for sure. You don't want to be stuck in a corner where there's no traffic. It's definitely a big consideration for competitions.
Yeah. So with all these events now, how do you think about where to go? Is it a good opportunity? Is it worse than the regional structure? Like, what's the story?
I think the biggest thing is we will personally go to all the United States sanctionals, and then we have partners around the world, like resellers that in most of them this year we had representation in all but Dubai and Iceland this year, which was pretty cool. So we had partners that were there, and we're probably going to do similar structure next year where we have our reseller partners run the events. We'll probably go to a couple of the international ones. It's just it's so difficult now with 26 of them. That's 26 events you got to throw on your calendar, whether we're there or not. But you got to, from a scheduling standpoint and resources and making sure they have enough gear and things to do it. It adds a whole new level. I do think the global expansion is really been great for our brand, because similar to kind of CrossFit 5 years ago and how it kind of really exploded here in the United States, we're seeing that in other parts of the world right now. Just like something that's hot on the West Coast or the East Coast, finally hits the Midwest, 2 to 3 years later, and then I think we're seeing that same pattern happen in Europe, South America, Australia, even parts of Asia right now is kind of really expanding there. And if you were to look at a affiliate map, probably, and I'm sure CrossFit has all this data, whether they'll release it or not, just the amount of gyms that are opening up in those different areas is wild right now, which is probably why there's so many events taking place in those places. So we'll have some representation at most of them, if not all.
Yeah, I think that's one of the positives of the sanctional model is allowing those local communities to have their event, right? And it's like, hey, this isn't just CrossFit coming and doing it. This is sort of more of like a grassroots opportunity to grow the CrossFit community in each of those areas. For BearKomplex, you guys are able to actually sell a lot of stuff at those events. So it's probably easier to put it on the calendar than for someone who's just there giving out free samples too.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right? Because if you're like, okay, we're going to put 26 events on the calendar and pay a sponsorship fee for each of them and send people there to give up cut up pieces of a protein bar. That's a much harder thing to take on.
Yeah, and one of the unfortunate things too is with that, once an event becomes a sanctioned event or a sanctional, all of a sudden their prices increase significantly too. Yeah. And we've seen that time and time again, where they get this, they get granted an CrossFit event or a sanctional event, and next thing you know, it doubles. So then our cost doubles on our right away, which is painful at times. So to your point of giving away, free stuff. If that booth was $5,000, to give away free stuff and not make any money, but now that booth is $10,000 and did not get anything, that hurts badly.
And with the sanctional, the change is not only more expensive, but there's a lot more competition. Like the Granite Games double the
with vendors,
the vendors this year, yeah. So I don't know, maybe it was a bubble year where people realize that there's just too many people. Because I don't think anyone was really thrilled with how we did at some of those events this year. So we might see some people fall off. But yeah, it was definitely a lot more competitive for the vendors as well.
Yeah, I wonder if there will be, like you mentioned, Jason, just like a market correction, right? Because people don't necessarily know what they can actually charge to have vendors come in there. Vendors don't know if it's going to make any sense for them, since it's sort of a new structure. Are we actually going to, at least break even going to this thing, or are we going to be losing money and then saying, oh, well, we raised brand awareness? I don't know.
And a few of these are brand new events. Like Rogue was the first time event, so we get it. It's the first time they're putting on a show, so I don't think anyone was upset with them or anything. But there was some traffic flow issues, and just the timing of the events didn't really lend itself positively for the vendors. People had maybe 5-6 hours a day to hang out in Vendor Village, and historically they have upwards of 10 hours 3 days a week. So,
and that's something I think that they all have to take into consideration, because the vendors provide a lot of revenue and cash for the events right away. I know they're not cheap to put on, and most of them do a really, really nice job. But the vendors are a big driving force in that revenue coming in as well. So.
And I think it's a cool thing for the spectators. They know that there's going to be staples, and they want to go to BearKomplex and get the new grips, or whoever it is, and go run the treadmill at the assault bike and try to win an assault bike. There's a lot of cool draw for it too, so.
Yeah, it's part of the whole experience, right?
Yeah.
You can only watch people work out for so long. You got to get out and socialize a little bit, right?
Yeah, people definitely go with the intention of like, I'm going to go to Vendor Village and I'm just going to spend money, which is kind of interesting, right? I mean, that's they're like, I don't know what I'm going to get. I'm just going to get in there and start spending.
So they can show up with the shoes and the belts and the Boxstar T-shirts and everything, and you're wondering what happened over the weekend because now they're just decked out.
Yeah, where do you go?
yeah. So I mean, how do you guys think about like, okay, what are these people actually looking for in like their shopping spree mode at an event like that?
I think there's two main drivers. I think it's what you need, to Jake's point before, people see the grips and they need that, or maybe it's a belt or whatever. But then there's also the aspect in CrossFit that people want to look like they belong and they want to wear what the cool kids are wearing. So I think they want to get something that shows that, they are part of the club and whether it's what the cool athletes are wearing or what the other people in their gym are wearing, they want to belong and fit in. And I think that's a driving force. Like in my gym, you might see one or two people with an Under Armour shirt on when they first start, and then a couple months in, it's rogue and the Under Armour shirt doesn't come out anymore, know?
Yeah, I think that's we always try to introduce like a new product too at the events. We have our usual stuff, and then we try to introduce like a new product at events. But then also giving discounts.
Do you have 26 new products this year?
No, I don't have 26 in the pipeline. That's going to be more difficult. But then we also give deals and stuff too. Like it's expensive to come to these events and come hang out and. Aside from spending money in our booth, which, we're happy when people stop by, they've got, upwards of 30, 40, 50, 100 other booths to go to too. And it can get very expensive. And we like to give people discounts and make them feel good about it, So I think that adds to the experience too. People want to feel good about their purchase when they're there, spending money all over the place, so...
Yeah, interesting. And there is something to that, like, okay, I'm at this specific event, so it's like, all right, cool, I can get this new gear, I can get this discount, whatever. It all feels like part of the experience.
Yeah. From like a vendor aspect, that's really our time where we look at it as like we can make that in-person connection with the customer and, like Jake said, maybe give them a discount, but then they have that knowledge of us and they like us because we had a good interaction and we gave them a little deal, and then maybe they'll repurchase down the road and become a fan of the brand.
Yeah, and what is the? I mean, I don't know if you guys track this at all, but what is like the lifetime value type of situation with people who are purchasing stuff at events? Are you able to see like, okay, this person found us at regionals this year and then has like been a continued customer?
We can probably run some of that stuff through our Shopify. One thing I will say, Todd, to that point, every time when we come back from an event, we see a spike over the next week or so in our online traffic. And to this point, I think the biggest reason and this has always happened. I think it's Jason bought a pair of grips. And he went back to his box in Wisconsin, and he showed Todd, hey, look what I got. Todd's like, oh, these are nice. Where'd you get them? Well, I got them at the event, but, they're at BearKomplex.com. Todd then hops on and is like, oh, let me buy a pair, too. And I think that really happens a lot for us, and probably other brands as well, because people get back to the gym, they show off their purchases, whatever they may be, and their workout partners or people that are in their class, their community,
where I see that a lot of is if we do a pre-order for a gym. So say, Todd, I make a run of South Loop T-shirts, tank tops, whatever it is. Do like a 2-week pre-order. A bunch of people order. A lot of people don't see it for whatever reason, or maybe they don't like it. When the gear gets in, the next week or so, a lot of follow-up orders come through.
Interesting.
It's that FOMO kicking in.
Exactly.
They missed out, and now they want it,
Yeah, Yeah, it's almost like the dynamic is maybe similar to like a band going on tour, right? You go on tour and you have the people who you play to, and then you actually hope that those people then tell their friends, they bought the record and they're like, hey, you got to listen to this also. And then the next time you come through, there's ideally, the people who were there the first time, plus their friends, plus like a new crop of people who then see the show and then tell their friends.
Right.
It's like similar.
Right.
Yeah.
Or somebody's opening up for another band and you happen to be there and you watch them and you're like, oh shit, those guys were really good. Like, and then you become a fan.
Is there is there anything that you do deliberately or just have noticed that actually increases that? I mean, I guess just like recommendation engine of people saying, hey, yeah, you should also check this out.
We've tried a little bit. Like we tried giving take home, like we did a thing where it was like a scratch off and you could win up to like 20 or 30% off, hoping that they'd go home and order. A little uptick, but nothing significant. That's about all we've really done.
Yeah, probably same. By the end of the event, our head's usually spinning, and we gotta get back to it. Still trying to feel normal after being up in Madison for 9 days. So
yeah, we always joke around that after a big event, it's we're working for 5 or 6 days at the event, but really it's 3 or 4 couple weeks beforehand prepping, and then a week decompression afterwards.
Yeah, no doubt.
It definitely they're big time commitments and stressors too.
Yeah, and well, but if it's actually working, then it's still worth doing, right?
Right.
It's like, okay, if you can theoretically, ideally at least make some money at the event through volume of stuff sold, then potentially get some referrals right after the event. And ideally, some of those people then become long-term customers who are then going to, especially for both of your businesses, continuously repurchase. Right? Yeah. It's not like you buy one pair of grips or one pair of knee sleeves or you wear one T-shirt. It's like,
right. Fit Aid wouldn't give free drinks all weekend long if it wasn't working,
Yeah. And to your point, when you said the interaction, I think that's a huge part of it too. When people come into your booth and you engage with them and, ask them their name and have a quick little conversation or a long conversation, however long it is. But, they can go back and say, yeah, I got this cool T-shirt or these cool shorts and I met Jason, dude was awesome. And, we had a good time in the booth and it was fun. And
honestly, they might have just bought it because they liked you.
Yeah.
Like
that's sales 101, right? People buy things from people they like.
For us, like now we got Noble, Reebok, Nike, Rogue, like a T-shirt's a T-shirt, right? We're not doing anything. We're not making special grips for different kind of bars. We're hopefully putting cool, designs on them. But really, you're buying it because you like the brand or the person, so that's a huge part of it.
So you're saying that vendors shouldn't just like sit there with their head down, not making eye contact with people, playing with their phone? Is that not what you should do?
That usually doesn't pan out.
There's a reason
probably
why.
Won't see them at the next.
There's a reason
won't see them at the next one.
Some vendors do better than others, and sometimes you'll see we see people at events like the same person over and over year after year, and I've made friendships with people.
Yeah,
that they live in Kentucky, but I'll shoot them a message and say, "How's it going, man?" That's kind of cool.
And they're like, "Who's this?"
No, like you see them. Like I'm sure there's people that you see all the time, and
yeah, we're like roadies.
Yeah,
yeah, it's the same crew all the time. Yeah. So I mean, for both of you guys, I mean, both with Boxstar and BearKomplex, and then also Jason, your gyms. I mean, what are your current priorities? What are you thinking going into the next season of competitive CrossFit with the Open coming up, as well as just like the overall landscape of how the sport is changing, how the messaging from CrossFit HQ is changing. What are you guys prioritizing?
Jake, wanna hop on that first?
Yeah, I think our biggest thing right now is riding the wave as far as all the changes go. The global expansion and distribution has been very big for us as we're casting a bigger net, if you will.
And the biggest thing there is you guys are partnering with like international distributors, essentially.
Yep. That's usually what we're doing. And we're finding a really good team around the world to help with that and more distribution.
Yeah. So how does that work? Are you manufacturing it and then sort of like shipping it to them, and then they do
exactly.
With it? Yeah.
And we have some distribution centers, and then we have just resellers that are, have their own websites or stores, and then they ship to their customers wherever they may be. That's been really big for us. And then the other part is just aligning with strategic partners. And just trying to do everything we can to make the best products out there and continue to be innovative.
What's a strategic partner? That sounds like a corporate buzzword to me.
It is. So when you were talking about your exercise science, strategic partners are just other brands that you can partner with that maybe have different audiences. That are doing different things. For example, Challenge Me Training is one that we're working with right now, and they are doing some cool stuff with Wodapalooza this year. So you can sign up for the the online qualifier for Wodapalooza. But one of the additions is you can pay to sign up for Wodapalooza and pay your $30 and do the online qualifiers. But for $10 extra, you can get into kind of a cash prize pool where maybe you make the event, maybe you don't, but you can still do the workouts in this side and win a ridiculous amount of prizes, win cash, win all sorts of stuff. You can win a trip down to Miami and Wodapalooza, and we've got like a ton of prizes and stuff going towards that. And Wodapalooza is one of the biggest events of the year, probably the largest sanctional. But it's a way to work with partners like that to get our product out there, but they have an innovative new way for somebody that's going to be working out and doing the qualifier anyway, to make a little bit of money or win some prizes or win a trip to Miami, which is pretty cool. So stuff like that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different players in the space, and it makes a lot of sense for people to say, hey, you know what, like we are offering, this specific app or we're this competition, and then we want to have people on board as well who have their own audience, or potentially, everyone's audience is in the same area, and you can just like Venn diagram all those audiences together.
No doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Excuse me. For Boxstar, I kind of talked about it before. We're kind of shifting focus to the affiliates, just speaking as an affiliate owner who has very little time to put into putting out cool apparel and cool retail for my members. It's something we just don't want to deal with. Realize that there's definitely a market of gym owners who don't want to do anything. They just want to have a very turnkey solution. So that's what we've kind of focused on with Boxstar is helping these gyms as best as we can. Like I mentioned before, we still love the competitions and we still will go to them, and we don't want to neglect our retail customers, but we're finding a lot of opportunity in the affiliate space. So we're going to try to take advantage of that for the time being. And then with the gym, it's kind of just, like I said before, realizing who our ideal client is and reaching out to them. And at a more higher level thing, our goal is to kind of change the culture like we talked about at the beginning of the show. Wisconsin is known for eating cheese curds and drinking beer. And while I love that, once or twice throughout the month, like there's people who do it 3 times a week, and, family members of mine, and it's not healthy. So trying to change those habits, the culture in my town, in Wisconsin, and ultimately the world, right?
Yeah, I think the that concept of the sort of like turnkey solution for gym retail is really interesting, in that placing shirt orders and getting all that set up can be just like a pretty clumsy and painful process, right? It's like I have to make some spreadsheet with like how many sizes I want. I have to guess what members are going to buy, and I feel like we sold a lot of small t-shirts last time, but that was kind of weird. I don't know if that's going to continue. you have to put down the cash up front, obviously, to even hold the inventory, which, yeah, if you sell them, like, great, you're actually making money on it, but then that can be a significant risk, especially for a lot of affiliate owners if they're, not flush with cash. As
Right.
very rarely is a CrossFit affiliate flush with cash. So, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, how are you guys approaching that with people? Are you doing the designs for them? Are you, they send you the design and then they have like a website that members can pre-order? What actually happens?
So we actually have, for most of our clients so far, they've just basically wanted their simple logo. So they all have the designs. They shoot it over. We mock it up.
And you're like, do you have like a higher resolution file? Because
Right.
you just like screen capped your Facebook logo. And they're like,
We get a lot of that. Some, have their ducks in a row and they have the vectors and all that good stuff. But some we have to work with. But then, so we'll host the products on our website and we'll make like a custom, say it's South Loop, a custom South Loop strength and conditioning page. You send your members there. They'll order through us, and that way we can handle the money and the tracking, and we know how many units we have to make for you. And then once the pre-order's done, we box it all up, ship it to you, and then we just cut you a check at the end of, when the production's done, and we send all the tees and tanks and everything. So you don't have to invest any money, which is huge for a lot of gym owners. Also, because you don't have to invest up front, we can offer a lot more. So we can do 3 different sweatshirts and 3 different color shorts, and we're only going to make what's purchased.
yeah, that's awesome too. Because I mean, we know we're always going to sell black t-shirts, and then we're like, oh, let's try like a different color or a different design. Sometimes it's great and like it's gone immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh, cool, maybe people want that. And then you make it again and no one actually wanted
Right.
it. They just got it because it was new. And then you try something one time, we got these yellow shirts once and I was like, oh God, this is a different color than what I thought it was actually going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It was just sat there forever.
Or, even speaking just retail in general, like we'll come up with a design that we think's, going to go nuts and everyone's going to love it, and it doesn't do much at all. And then something that we're just kind of meh on, is our top seller. So you never really know in that sense. It's kind of hard to predict.
That seems like a really smart idea. It's surprising to me, like the amount of, and this is more, I guess, for members, but the amount of gyms you drop into and they have no apparel whatsoever. Because how often do people that drop in want to buy a t-shirt?
Mm-hmm.
Like all the time, or they have double XL and,
Right.
and extra small and nothing in between. If there was a way to figure that out,
Right.
where they could, not lay the money out, because I know that's a big thing, but then, bring on a few extra to have for those drop-ins when they come in. It's just an additional revenue stream for the
Right.
gym,
Right.
which is like a no-brainer.
And let's be real. I mean, it's no fault to the gym owners, but most of us don't have a business background. We're not focusing on additional streams of revenue. Most of us opened a gym because we loved strength and conditioning or CrossFit or whatever it is, and we loved geeking out about coaching. And we're like, oh, hey, let's open a gym. Or you had the opportunity to maybe buy a gym. A lot of gym owners don't have the financial background to understand what they can invest in and what they can't, or it's just not on their mind and they don't think about it.
No doubt.
So how do you find these gym owners? How do you get them on board to, have their apparel made through you?
That's something that we're continuing to try to figure out.
Do you have any strategic partners?
Good buzzword.
We're certainly looking for some.
Yeah.
Obviously, we just started this, within the past 12 months. So I've just had a whole bunch of, you're in the CrossFit space for a while. You're going to meet a lot of gym owners. Especially for me, I've been going to local events for 3 or 4 years now. I just have a list of affiliate owners that I've been contacting. There will be a point where I'll exhaust that list and I'll have to start thinking of more creative ways, which we're starting to do a little bit. But yeah, that's something I'm gonna have to sit down and think about.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it's something that it's solving a problem for people, right? It's very clearly like gyms should have t-shirts. Jake, like you mentioned, they're like, yeah, I know I should place another shirt order. We only got extra larges left, but like again, it's like, I don't want to like pull up the spreadsheet and like every time they screw up my order because I send it in and then they send me the proof and I like don't really look at the email and then I say sure and then they send me something like crazy and I'm like, what in the world is this?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's like a high friction, painful process that's really easy to put off. So I mean, there's a lot of people who have that problem. So
and I don't know if I would have figured that out if I wasn't dealing it as an affiliate owner too.
Yeah.
And literally as easy as it is I send you a link to our website, you post it in your Facebook group, because every gym has a members only Facebook group, and you say, hey guys, here's the link, go there. Easy peasy.
Simple.
That's the way you got to do it. You got to make it easy.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yep. Cool. All right, guys, let's give people the I mean, other than your current stuff going on, what's where should they go if they want to follow social media accounts, to be on newsletters, to, I don't know, purchase products? What's the story? Where should they go?
For me, we have you can follow me at Jason J. Yule on Instagram, at Harbor Park CrossFit, at Boxstar Apparel, and all three of those will link to each other and have whatever link you want to find associated with it on the Instagram. So any of those three work for me.
And Harbor Park CrossFit is in the lovely city of Kenosha.
Kenosha, don't you know? And Racine. Yeah. Kenosha and Racine, Wisconsin.
Do you actually say Kenosha? Like, when
if you mean like, do I accentuate the O?
Yeah, like if you were just to say, no?
Kenosha. Oh. Maybe. I guess if I have an accent, I don't think I do, but maybe it sounds like I do.
Right. Did you bring any spotted cow down?
I did not. I apologize for that.
I was just there for 10 days. I should have stocked up. That's on me.
Is that your favorite?
I mean, I think it's just one of those things. It's supply and demand. You can't get anywhere else. I think it's good though. It's really good.
It's not the best beer you're going to have, but it's a quality beer, and you can only buy it in Wisconsin, so it has that draw.
Yeah,
we're in Wisconsin. We got to get a spotted cow.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a bar on the border of Minnesota, and they would drive to New Glarus, purchase some kegs, drive back, and they actually got in some legal trouble for transporting it across the border.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
I believe it.
You can't do that.
Which is kind of crazy because, we're business owners and we're like, hey man, I want more people with my product. But I think the allure of only in Wisconsin kind of helps that as well.
Yeah.
Because that's all I drink, is because that's Wisconsin beer. So.
Yeah. On your 1 to 2 times a month?
Yeah, right.
Not 3 times a week?
Well, 1 or 2 times a month, but when we party, we're partying right.
All right, there you go. All right, that's
I like
fair.
it.
That's fair. All right, Jake, what's the deal with BearKomplex?
Just BearKomplex. I don't know if anybody goes anywhere else besides Instagram these days in our community. So at BearKomplex, complex with a K.
Yeah, do you spell that normally, or how do I spell that?
Yeah, complex with a K.
And then how does it end? Is there like
an X?
Oh, interesting. Cool.
Did you name that after like the BearKomplex movement? Did you guys think that was cool? Or where did the name come about?
That's a good question. So when we first developed the grips and thought we had a really good product, we had now to come up with a name. And sometimes coming up with a name's like the hardest part. And we wanted it to be, fitness, CrossFit related or whatever, but we didn't want to be like burpee grips or something silly like that. We were tossing stuff out, and my business partner Nate just said BearKomplex, and he was like, those suck. And I was like, immediately I was like, that's it. Like we stopped right there because it just like I don't know, it just had a ring to it.
Yeah.
And we just thought we'd change the C to a K just to switch it up a little bit. But for those of you who have never done a BearKomplex, it's pretty terrible. Front squat, push press, back squat, push press over again. Power clean, front squat.
Yeah, starts with
power clean, front squat, push press, back squat, push press over again. So if you haven't done one, go try it. Try multiple and see how you
do like 7 in a row without dropping the bar.
Yeah, 7 in a row without dropping the bar, and
it'll
change your life.
It's a dry mouth
yeah,
movement.
probably not for the better. So
you start to get that lack of saliva.
Yeah.
where you got like a 20-second rest in between each next movement.
Yeah, just holding that bar in the front rack, just like, I have no spit in my mouth. What do I do now?
It's pretty terrible.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks for listening all the way through. I admire your grit, your persistence, and your perseverance. Since you made it, I have a few favors to ask of you. Go ahead, open up the show notes on whatever podcast player you use. In there, you'll find links to all the resources that were mentioned throughout the show. There's also some links there in which you can leave a review or subscribe to the show. And podcasters are always harping on this because this actually makes a difference in terms of the algorithms that recommend podcasts to new people. So if you do that, it helps more people find the show. And if you head over to toddneef.com, you can sign up to receive most of my thoughts and writing, which really only go out to the email list. A lot of it never makes it to the blog or the podcast. So if you like what I have to say and you want to see some of my recommendations and stuff that I've been checking out, go ahead and subscribe to that email newsletter as well.